4 years after the legendary Summit Series, the hockey world was ready for a true best-on-best tournament. This time, the stakes were even higher. The best of the best from 6 hockey nations clashed in a brand new tournament, the 1976 Canada Cup, and leading the charge, a Canadian roster so stacked it looked like a cheat code. Orr, Hull, Lafleur, and a total of 18 future Hall of Famers. This was more than a tournament. It was Canada asserting their dominance in the sport. In today's video, we're diving deep into the team, the drama, and the unforgettable moments of the 76 Canada Cup. In the 60s and 70s, the Soviet Union dominated international hockey tournaments, whether it was the Worlds or the Olympics. They found themselves at the top of the podium more often than not. Canadians, of course, always believed it was their sport, and this was what finally led to the 72 Summit Series, the most dramatic 8 games of hockey ever. This tournament opened up endless possibilities, and the demand for a best-on-best tournament was palpable, thanks to Paul Henderson's goal and Canada's triumph. Thus, the Canada Cup was created. 6 nations were gonna send their best players for hockey and cultural dominance. However, one of Canada's best players, 48-year-old Gordie Howe, declined to play for Team Canada. He didn't want to play against his 2 American-born sons. Howe stated, "I can't in any way see a father getting on the ice against his sons. Hockey is a physical, body contact sport, and there's no way I could ever play against Mark or Marty." This was quite the blow for Canadian GM Sam Pollock, who held the same title with the Habs. Howe wasn't in the NHL anymore, but was still a capable player, putting up 102 points with the Arrows of the WHA. Even after his sons withdrew from the tournament due to injury, Howe still declined to play. He was pushing 50, so it's understandable. Bobby Orr, another legend, was questionable due to a knee injury. He was coming off his 5th knee surgery, which limited him to just 10 games in the 75-76 season. On top of this, he signed with the Blackhawks after a storied career with the Bruins, and they weren't too keen on him playing for Team Canada. Luckily for Canada, he was eventually cleared, and as you'll see in part 2, he played a huge role for the team. This luck didn't rub off on Ken Dryden, whose knee pain turned out to be a cartilage tear. He had to get surgery in the summer and was ruled out for the tournament. His absence opened up the crease for Rogie Vachon, who played all 7 games. It wasn't just the players. Pollock had to select a competent coaching staff, one that could counter the possession-based and highly skilled European teams. His first choice was obviously Scotty Bowman, who initially turned down the job. Eventually though, Pollock was able to convince him to cut his summer short and run the team. Fun fact, one of Bowman's assistants was Don Cherry, the man, the myth, the legend, and head coach of the Bruins. Whereas Pollock had some convincing to do with coaches, players were knocking down the door for a chance to make the team. When Daryl Sittler was selected for the team, he said, "This was the biggest series of my life. I'm definitely going to train harder than I have any other summer." This was the attitude Canadian players were expected to have, unlike the commotion of 1972 when star players like Gilbert Perreault and Richard Martin led a revolt. They were 2 of several players who left the team because of low ice time. Alan Eagleson, tournament organizer, came out and said, after the dissension that accompanied the 1972 series, the players thought a stand should be taken from the outset. The 1972 trouble caused a split among players and deteriorated team morale. Phil Esposito and Bobby Clarke were 2 of the players that took the stand. This leadership group was not going to accept any poutiness, whining, or complaining. Players were expected to place the maple leaf above themselves. When camp opened, Bowman put the players through grueling training sessions. He said, "We expect their legs to feel like rubber after the workout on the mountain." The plan was to counter European skill with elite and relentless conditioning. Canada was going to take the game to their opponents. Their biggest opponent, the Soviet Union, made a lot of noise before the tournament even began. First, they threatened to pull out of the Canada Cup if Olympic diver Sergei Nemtsonov wasn't returned to them. They accused Canada of brainwashing, drugging, and kidnapping him after the 76 games in Montreal. In reality, he was looking to defect to the West and was assisted by his friends on the American swim team. Then closer to the tournament, Arkady Chernyshov, a senior Soviet hockey official, accused Canada of trying to raise the status of the Canada Cup above the Worlds and Olympics, which was an odd charge. Those tournaments were never best on best. The results were pretty much predetermined. It was like he knew the Soviets were going to lose again like 72 and was preempting the fallout. Others came out and said the real World Championship is in Vienna in the spring, and the Canada Cup was an opportunity to try out some new tactics. Don Cherry wasn't buying it and came out swinging. They can't lose saying that damn fool stuff. If they win, it'll be in spite of the so-called exhibition tournament, and if they lose, well, they'll just say they're getting ready for the World Championships. Whatever mind games the Soviets were trying to play, they weren't going to work. Canada was stacked from top to bottom and heavily favored to win. Here are some of the players that made the team. Bobby Orr, Denny Potvin, Bobby Hull, Gilbert Perreault, Phil Esposito, Daryl Sittler, Marcel Dion, Guy Lafleur, Bobby Clark, Serge Savard, Lanny McDonald, and Larry Robinson. Damn, if I were on the Soviet team, I would have been afraid too. But before we get into any game action, if you're enjoying this video, please drop a like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 25,000 in 2025, and I can do it with your help. Thank you. For $17.50 a ticket, you could have witnessed Canada shellac the Finns 11-2 in the tournament opener. This wasn't much of a game. In fact, it was over within the first 12 minutes as Canada took a 4-0 lead on the back of Bobby Hall, who scored 2 goals. Rick Martin had a hat-trick, Esposito scored 2, and Bobby Orr had 3 assists. It wasn't all good news. Captain Bobby Clark got his foot tangled under a Finnish player and suffered an Achilles injury. X-rays initially ruled him out for the tournament, but come on, we're talking about Bobby Clark here. You know he's going to come back. Esposito later said the only time the Finns appeared threatening was at the beginning when they were introducing the starting lineup. To be fair, the Finns were quite young, and this was their first time playing against real pros. Fresh off his hat-trick, Rick Martin preached caution, stating, "The Czechs, the Russians, the Swedes, and even the Americans will put up a much better battle than these guys did." And boy, he was right. 3 days later, Canada suited up against the US without Captain Clark. It didn't faze him early, as Esposito scored this power play marker within the first 5 minutes. Assist to Dion and Orr. 12:51 into the first, on the power play again, Pete Mahovlich buried a Bobby Orr rebound to double the Canadian lead. Right before heading to their dressing room for the intermission, Bobby Hall gave Canada the most dangerous lead in hockey, 3-0. Canada was destined for another blowout victory, but hang on, this American team wasn't going to go down without a fight. Halfway into the second, Fred Ahern scored after taking a pass from Harvey Bennett of the Washington Capitals, 3-1 Canada. With just over 3 minutes left in the frame, Bobby Hall with the brutal giveaway to Steve Jensen, who made no mistake burying the puck past Rogie Vachon. The Canadian lead was cut down to 1. This had the makings of a miracle on ice, 4 years before the main event, but it just wasn't meant to be. Canada clamped down in the third period, not giving up anything, and the Americans finished with just 16 shots. Sittler added an empty netter with just 13 seconds remaining, and the Canadians won 4-2. The story after the game wasn't about the failed US comeback, it was about Canadian injuries. Jimmy Watson, steady defensive D-man, was ruled out for the rest of the tournament with a broken cheekbone after blocking a shot. Bobby Orr pulled his groin, and Denny Potvin's list of injuries make it sound like he survived wrestling a bear. He had a charley horse, a sore foot, and a sore wrist. However, there was good news on the injury front as well. Bobby Clark was expected to return against the Swedes, who were led by Börje Salming and Ulf Nilsson. Just 4 minutes in, Canada got off to a lucky start as Esposito's shot hit Bobby Hall, who wasn't even facing the net, and went in past Hardy Astrom. Halfway through the second, Bob Gainey made his presence felt in his first game of the tournament with this goal. Adstrom couldn't handle the slap shot from McDonald, and Gainey pounced on the puck in the slot. Unfortunate for Adstrom, who was having a good game up to this point. This goal deflated the Swedes. And with just 20 seconds left in the middle frame, Dion delivered the dagger on a sweet centering pass from Mahovlich. 3-0 Canada. And they weren't going to let the Swedes crawl back into this one. They locked it down in the third, and Bob Gainey added his second of the night to make it 4-0. A shutout for Vachon. Vachon's job was made much easier by Canada snuffing out Salming, Sweden's biggest threat. Gainey said, "He's too good. If you let him skate, he's going to hurt you." Bowman added, "We had to come up with a strategy to get Salming's game down." And they did, not letting him lead the Swedish breakout with speed and making sure he was marked all night long. Against the Czechs, Canada's job was the opposite. They had to find a way to score against a refrigerator repairman, Vladimir Zorilla. Reminds you of when the Leafs had to beat a Zamboni driver, and just like the Leafs, Canada failed. The Czechs stymied the Canadians, and with less than 5 minutes remaining, they stunned the Canadians. Josef Augusta drove down the wing, centered it to Milan Novi, who made no mistake. 1-0 Czechoslovakia, and they held on for the win. After the game, Bowman said, "They didn't give up territory. If you give up 30 feet, they will take it and you won't get it back." All of a sudden, Canada was 3-1 and they needed at least a tie to advance to the final. "We've got to win. To hell with the tie," stated Bill Barber. Nothing was guaranteed against their final opponent of round robin, the Soviets, who were coming off a 5-0 victory against the US. "I like this kind of thing. I like the odds," said Bowman. Assistant coach Bobby Crom was much more dramatic. "We'll go out and do our best, and if we don't win it, we're not Canadians." Their passports weren't on the line, but the Canadians came out and played like they were. Perreault took Esposito's spot on the top line with Hall and Dion, and this move paid immediate dividends. 7:08 into the first, Dion tipped a Denny Potvin shot past the feared Soviet goalie Vladislav Tretiak. 2 minutes later, Vladimir Vikolov tied the game at 1, but before the end of the first, Perreault and Hull connected to give Canada a 2-1 lead. 7 minutes into the second, Billy Barber doubled the Canadian lead and this sealed the deal. Canada outshot the Soviets 43-28. This would have been a blowout if it weren't for Tretiak. Seems like those new Soviet tactics didn't work. With this victory, Canada secured their place in the final of their namesake tournament, the first of its kind. How would they beat their greatest foe? Vladimir Zarilla, the ice-cold refrigerator repairman. But before we talk about the final, make sure to subscribe. Whereas the Soviets played a sophisticated offensive style, the Czechs played a stingy defense-first style. It was reminiscent of some North American teams. Their style is vaguely similar to that used by the Philadelphia Flyers or the Los Angeles Kings, said Scotty Bowman. They're a very experienced team with excellent checkers. Going one-on-one with them in the corners is rough. Another challenge for Canada was going to be breaking the neutral zone trap of the Czechs. They play in such a manner that you're never able to hit the center line with speed. They tend to cut you off. So, how did this defensive structure hold up in Game 1 of a 3-game set? Like a sieve holding water. Canada absolutely pummeled the Czechs. Perreault, again playing with Dion and Hull, opened the scoring just 65 seconds in, putting one in between Zarilla's legs. 8 minutes into the first, Sittler beats out the icing call, waits for his teammates to join him, finds Denny Potvin, who hammers one home. 2-0. 5 minutes later on the power play, Bobby Orr's knee looks just fine as he sifts through the Czech defense and backhands one past Zarilla. 3-0. With 3 minutes left in the first, the onslaught continues. Shot is blocked. Try saying that 10 times fast. And Guy Lafleur pounces on the puck in the slot before beating Zarilla. 4-0 after 1 and Zarilla was pulled. Canada played the rest of the game on cruise control and won 6-0. Canada was just one win away from claiming the inaugural Canada Cup, and Game 2 went down as a classic. The Czechs decided to start their backup goalie, Jiří Holeček. This instantly backfired. 1:25 in, Perreault took a pass at center from Lafleur, flew in down the left wing, beat the Czech defender, and slid it past Holeček to make it 1-0. 90 seconds later, Esposito hops on a loose puck in the Czech zone, not a single defender in sight, and beats Holeček to make it 2-0. That was the end of the game for Holeček, who made way for our favorite fridge mechanic, Zarilla. Would this impact the game? Absolutely. Zarilla shut the door the rest of the period to ensure it remained 2-0. Halfway into the second, Bob Gainey couldn't get the puck out the zone. The Canadians started to chase the play, and the puck eventually found its way to leading Czech scorer Milan Novi. He made no mistake cutting the Canadian lead in half. 2-1 heading into the third, and what a third period it was. Just 2 minutes in, Marian Stastny fired the puck up to Yaroslav Puzar, who fires one home. Probably a goal that Vachon would love to have back. The Czechs had done it. They tied the game, but just 5 minutes later on the power play, who other than Bobby Clarke, banging home the rebound in front of the net. You could tear this guy's Achilles tendon right off the bone, he's still gonna play. The Czechs weren't phased. With just 5 minutes left, Josef Augusta scores the easiest goal of his life on the power play, as he was completely unmarked on the back post. 3-3, and the Czechs didn't stop there. 59 seconds later, Peter Stastny's shot is blocked by Bobby Orr, but Marian Stastny pounces on the puck and makes no mistake beating Vachon. 4-3 Czechs with 4 minutes remaining. All they had to do was reel it in, but with 2:12 remaining in regulation, Clarke dumps one in for Reggie Leach to chase, who finds Bill Barber in front of the net, and he makes no mistake tying this up. What a seesaw affair, and it's only fitting this game went to overtime. In the third period, Don Cherry, who was sitting in a scouting booth, relayed a message to the bench. He said, Zarilla was cutting down the angles and they should go wide on him. This may be his greatest contribution to Canadian hockey history, because 11 minutes into overtime, Daryl Sittler fakes a slap shot, goes wide around Zarilla, and tucks one home. Take a look at where Zarilla ended up here, in the face-off circle. Pre-butterfly goaltending was something else. Afterwards, Sittler said, I moved wide along the boards and he came out of the net and made a lunge at the puck. It was just a matter of rounding him and aiming for the open net. Canada had done it. They won the inaugural Canada Cup and cemented themselves as the world's greatest hockey power. They proved the Summit Series was not a fluke, and this tournament proved that there was demand for best-on-best hockey. The 6-team event generated over $2 million in profit, which was a lot in 1976. This was on the back of 10 million domestic viewers and advertisers willing to pay $20,000 a minute. This team is considered not just one of the best Canadian teams, but one of the best international teams ever. Some even consider it better than the '87 team, which I made a video on before and have a link down below. If you enjoyed today's video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 25,000 in 2025, and I can do it with your help. See you next time.